William Byron showed up to Watkins Glen sitting on 299 Cup Series starts, one race away from 300, a number most drivers in NASCAR history never reach, but by the time Stage 2 ended, his car was wrecked. He was 3 laps down, and the race that was supposed to be a milestone became the worst finish of his entire season. So what actually happened out there? Here is what makes that number actually mean something. 300 Cup starts is not handed to anyone. The Cup Series chews up drivers. It spits out careers. Sponsorship dries up. Results fall off. Teams change their minds. The fact that William Byron has been in the same car, at the same team, building the same program for all 300 of those races, tells you exactly how much Hendrick Motorsports believes in him. He made his Cup debut in 2018. He was 20 years old. He came in with the weight of a Hendrick seat on his shoulders at an age when most guys are still figuring out superspeedways, and he survived that pressure. That matters. By the time he pulled into Watkins Glen this weekend, Byron had wins on his record, playoff appearances stacked up, and a reputation as one of the most consistent drivers in the HMS stable. Not always the loudest name. Not always the headline, but always there. So yes, 300 starts is worth talking about, but here is the part nobody planned for. Byron did not just have a bad race at Watkins Glen. The race ended in a specific sequence of events that had nothing to do with car setup or strategy. And the location where it happened. That tells you everything about why this particular track turns ugly so fast. The bus stop chicane at Watkins Glen sits just before the back straight. It is a tight, compressed section where drivers brake hard and go single file. There is almost no room for error. When someone gets turned in the bus stop, the driver directly behind them has one option: hit them or hit the barrier. There is no third choice. That is exactly what happened to Byron in Stage 2. He got spun. Not a tap, not a brush. He got turned. The number 24 Chevrolet swung around in the chicane, and Ryan Blaney, running right behind him with nowhere to go, drove straight into the side of the car. The contact was immediate. The damage was real. And from that moment, Byron's race was over in every way that mattered. Even though he kept driving, he finished 36th, 3 laps down, on a day that was supposed to mark something special. Remember, we said 300 starts. That is a career built on consistency, on surviving, on putting the car where it needs to be week after week. And now the race that marked that number gave him the worst result he had seen all season. That contrast is not small. That is the entire story. Now here is where this gets bigger than just one bad race. Because what happened to Byron at Watkins Glen did not happen in February. It did not happen in a throwaway race when everyone is still warming up. This happened in May, with the playoff cutoff creeping closer and the points standings tighter than they look on paper. A 36th place finish does not just feel bad. It costs points. Real points. Points that stack up against the bubble drivers who had clean days while Byron was sitting in the garage watching his afternoon fall apart. The Cup Series playoff field takes 16 spots. Byron has generally been safe in that conversation, but safe in NASCAR does not mean comfortable. Every result matters. Every lap down is a lap you are not scoring points on. And when a race goes wrong the way Watkins Glen went wrong, the math shifts fast. Byron finished 3 laps down. 3 laps. At a road course where the field is not spread out over a 2-mile oval, 3 laps down is a statement. It means the car was hurting from early in the race and never recovered. What does that do to the points picture? It puts pressure on the next few weeks. It makes the All-Star race feel like a break he cannot afford to treat as just a bonus. It makes Charlotte feel even bigger than it already was. We are not talking about a driver who has been struggling all year. We are talking about a driver who reached 300 starts because he does not have days like this. That is the whole point. When Byron finishes 36th, it is news because it almost never happens. This race at Watkins Glen was the exception, not the pattern. But exceptions hurt too. Now let us talk about the bus stop for a second, because it has a history. Watkins Glen is one of the most respected road courses on the NASCAR schedule. Drivers who can handle road courses well have a real advantage in the playoffs when the schedule circles back around to them. Byron is not a slouch on road courses. He has run competitively there before, But the bus stop chicane has ended races for serious contenders year after year. It is the exact kind of section that punishes bad luck more than bad driving. You can be doing everything right and still get collected by someone else's mistake. That is what happened here. Byron was not the one who started the sequence, he got spun first. By the time Blaney arrived, the situation was already out of control. Both drivers were victims of the same corner in different ways, but only one of them went home 36th. Here is the question that actually matters going forward. Does a race like Watkins Glen change anything about how William Byron approaches the rest of the season? Or does he treat it as a number on a sheet, move on, and let his natural consistency take back over? The answer to that probably depends on whether this is truly a one-off incident or the start of a rough stretch. Byron's season up to this point was not the problem. The problem is that 300 starts deserved better, and what he got instead was a wrecked car, a damaged lap count, and a points hit that will sit in the standings until he erases it with a strong run. There is also the mental side of this. Milestone races are supposed to feel like something. Drivers talk about certain starts, certain moments, as markers they carry with them. Byron will carry this one too, but not the way anyone planned. The 300th start for William Byron will be remembered as the race where he got spun in the bus stop, where Blaney had no choice but to hit him, and where the number 24 team packed up early and drove to the next race knowing they left points on the table. We started by saying 300 starts puts you in rare company. That is still true. Nothing about Watkins Glen takes away from the career Byron has built. The wins are real. The playoff appearances are real. The consistency that got him to start number 300 does not disappear because of one bad afternoon. But NASCAR does not grade you on history. It grades you on this Sunday and on the Sunday after that. The next race on the schedule is the All-Star race at North Wilkesboro. No points, no playoff implications, just speed and bragging rights, which means Byron gets a week off from the pressure of the standings, a week to reset, a week for the team to go back through what happened, fix what the Watkins Glen damage left behind, and show up at Charlotte 2 weeks later ready to make the kind of run that 300 start drivers make. That is what this comes down to. Not whether Sunday hurt. It did. But whether the next few weeks show the version of Byron that got him to 300 in the first place, because that driver is still there. He just had his worst race of the season on the worst possible weekend, 300 Cup Series starts. That number still means something. It still represents everything Byron has put into this sport since he was 20 years old at Hendrick Motorsports, learning how to survive at the Cup level. Watkins Glen was one race, one section of one track, one piece of contact that turned a milestone day into a disaster.